Hello everyone, it's Shannon for Waffle Flower Crafts. Today I'm going to be combining Distressed Oxides and embossing folders. I'm going to be using these Waffle Flower products today. This new stamp set that just came out in our Fall 2000 release. It's called Hooray. It's designed by Helen Dardicht, and I just love the little girls and boys in this set. I'll be using the matching dies for that set as well. The stitched layers dies as well. And I'll be finishing up 2 additional cards with the First Step stamp set. I'm going to use a sentiment from this set, as well as this Enveloper Choice stamp set. I'm going to be using that cat image and the sentiment right there on the right. I'm going to start with these embossing folders. These are made by Sizzix. You can use any embossing folder that you might have. You just don't want to use any of the new folders out there that create a really three-dimensional texture. You don't get as much ink transfer. You can definitely try it, but I found that these ones that are a little less 3D give better results. So I'm opening up the folder here and showing you that there's basically 2 sides to the folder. One side that creates the recessed or valley areas of the image, and the other one that creates the raised areas. I will be inking up the side that creates the recessed areas, which happens to be on the Sizzix one, the larger half, which you'll see a bit better. I'm going to use 3 different shades of Distressed Oxides. Right there I have Broken China, Peacock Feathers, and Salty Ocean, and the more warmer hues is Wild Honey, Spiced Marmalade, and Abandoned Coral. And here I'm showing you one that I did. So I was practicing and I was getting some offset impressions, or at least the image was slightly offset from the actual embossed image. And I figured out a way to kind of avoid that a little bit, so I'll show you that as well in my video. So here's the embossing folder. I'm going to open it up here, and you can see that side is just the side that makes the valleys or the recessed areas is a little larger on this embossing folder, and I'm going to ink that up. You can definitely do it the other way around. You can ink up the raised areas. This way I just like the look of doing the valleys and having the raised areas be white. I am doing 3 colors. I start with my lightest color, which was Wild Honey, and then I went on to my medium, which was Spiced Marmalade, and then Abandoned Coral, just to reduce the contamination of my ink pads. So I've got it all inked up here, and now I'm going to mist it with a fine mist of water. Just going to spritz it a couple times here until I start to see the ink beading up. And you can see, and I'm going to make sure I go all around. This will kind of help the ink to mix and play on the surface a little bit, and also cover more so you don't have quite so splotchy of a look. I've tried this before in the past with dye inks, and I just never, and even pigment inks, I never really liked my results. I really like what I got with these Distressed Oxides. So I'm going to now run it through my embossing machine, or my, this is the Cuttlebug. I'm going to place an A2 panel of 110-pound white cardstock, so it's not watercolor paper, just 110-pound white cardstock, and I'm going to run it through horizontal like you see it here. I'm not going to run it vertical. I'm running it horizontal. I found that when I ran it vertical, I got more of that offset of the ink and the impression. So when I ran it horizontal like this, I had less of that occurring. And you want to make sure you only run it through once. Don't run it back through to grab it. Just pick it up on the other side to also avoid any of that offset. And so I'm going to pull it out here and open up, flip it over, and I'll open up and you can see. And because this is a little bit wet, you do get a little bit of ink in other places, but I don't mind that. I like the look, I like the play of the ink a little bit, but you can definitely still see the flowers and the leaves. You can still see the image. So I was very happy. I'm just taking a towel right now and just picking up any of that excess ink and water, and then I'll set this aside to dry. But I'll hold it up real quick for the camera so you can see. Hopefully you can see a little bit of that texture. So it's actually, all the white parts are actually the raised areas, and all the colored areas are the recessed areas. So really pretty, almost like letterpress, similar to a letterpress look. So here's the second. I'm going to do this one more time. It's the same process, but a different embossing folder and some different oxides. Starting with my lightest shade, which is Broken China. Just going to ink it all over. I'm kind of rubbing the surface as opposed to just pouncing. I found I got a little bit more ink if I rubbed the surface. And then the last was Peacock Feathers, and then this is Salty Ocean. So I've got it all inked up here. And again, this is the side that creates the recessed areas or the valleys. And then before I put my paper in here, I will spritz it with some water until I see that surface start to bead up. I want that ink to kind of move a little bit and mix and just create a little bit more of a distressed kind of look. So now that it's all beading on the surface, I'm ready to put my A2 panel. And again, this is a panel made from 110-pound white cardstock, not watercolor paper. Since from my last video I played around with water in my 110-pound white cardstock, and I really liked the results, and I found that my paper could handle a little bit of water. So trying it out with some more techniques with that involve water, and these worked really well. As I had great results, very little warping too, so I was very happy. Now I'm going to open this up and you'll see, and again I ran it through the machine at horizontal, so I think that helps. So if you do run it vertical, you end up you can move as you move your paper moves through your die cutting machine, it can like squish your paper down and smush it beyond the out of its little track of the embossing folder, and I think that's what causes the skipped or offset image. So I found that if you turned it for horizontal, you had less of that happening. And there we go, it's stamped, the impression is very clean, very neat, no offset, not that double effect that's kind of dizzying like a 3D effect. So I really liked these results. So I'm going to set these aside to dry, and while they're drying I'm going to work on my sentiment and image. So for the blue panel, I'm going to stamp one of the girls from the Hooray stamp set. I'm just inking her up in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I will stamp her in a flower on just a scrap of white cardstock. And once I'm done with this, I'm going to color in parts of her outfit, the stripes on her dress, her boots, and her hair bows with just a Tombow black marker. I just wanted, my sentiment's going to be stamped on a strip of black paper or black cardstock, and this just incorporates the image. It kind of ties in that black a little bit so it's not so stark. So I'm just coloring in a little bit. Now I apologize, my hand's in the way, I know, but I'm just coloring the stripes. They're just very, very small, so I really had to get down in there. But I just colored in the stripes. Now I'm finishing up coloring the bows in her hair. Nothing fancy. And then I use the matching dies, the Hooray matching dies, to die cut the girl and the flower. I didn't color the flower at all, just the stripes, her boots, and the bows in her hair. And now I'm going to move on to stamping a couple sentiments. I've got Hooray from the Hooray stamp set down at the bottom, and then over on the right now is a sentiment from the First Step stamp set. I'm going to ink them up in Versamark and stamp them on some black cardstock, and then I will emboss them with some white embossing powder and heat set this. I will then trim these down after I heat set them, and then they'll be basically ready for my card. I'll be almost ready to put it all together. One last thing I'm going to make before I assemble my cards is I'm going to take that middle die from the Stitched Layers die set and die cut a panel out of this just scrap of vellum that I have. And I'm going to rotate this around and get a little bit more from my vellum here. And this vellum layer will help just to set the image off. I'm going to use this with the girl, and you'll see this will just make the girl pop a little bit from that background, because that background is very bright and bold, and it's easy to lose things. So that little bit of vellum will help subdue that just area of that background, so you can see the girl a little bit better. So I'm going to now adhere these panels down onto an A2 top folding card base. I'm just going to use some Tombow Mono multi-liquid adhesive to adhere these down. I like this right now over using tape adhesive or a tape runner. Just hold it for a second and then set that aside to dry, and then I'll do the same thing with this other panel. And you can also use, if you don't have Distressed Oxides, you can definitely try this technique of inking your embossing folders with other inks. You'll definitely get some transfer of the ink onto your paper. It just may not be so clean and crisp of an image. I just really, the Distressed Oxides, because of the new formula, they're a little bit stickier, and they just stuck, the ink stuck fairly nicely to the embossing folders, and I just really liked the results that I got. Okay, so I'm going to start with the warmer card, the one with the flowers. I'm taking the sentiment that is from the First Step stamp set and that I embossed and trimmed down, and I'm just going to add some foam tape to the back of it, and then I'll adhere it right in the center. And I really like the way the black pops against that colorful background. And that's a very clean and simple card, but the texture really from the embossing folder really sets it off. So yeah, this is going to be for the cooler card, the blue card. I'm going to add some foam tape, cut strips of it here, and add it behind the girl and the flower. And then I'm going to remove the backs, and then I'm going to adhere it onto the vellum panel that I cut using the Stitch Layers die. Kind of center it here. I do have a small section of the stem of the flower that has no foam tape, so I can fit that little area over her hand so it appears that she's holding that flower. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that Hooray sentiment. I'm just going to take some foam tape, add it behind the sentiment, and then adhere it onto that vellum panel. And then to add a little bit more dimension and also to make that image really stand out against the colorful background, I'm going to add a little bit more foam tape. I'm going to put it right behind pretty much all the areas that I've added foam tape earlier. And this is just going to lift that little vellum up away from the background and really make it pop. So I'm just going to jump ahead and I just pull off all the little pieces, and then I'll center this onto my card front. And this card will be practically done, and you'll really see how that little bit of vellum kind of helps, because this can be a little bit busy, but I also wanted to show you that you don't have to, with colorful backgrounds, you don't always have to just do like a very bold sentiment. You can also incorporate some of your images too. And the nice thing is, because the background's so colorful, you often don't have to color your images. Now you've got enough color from that beautiful background that you can just keep your images nice black and white. Plus they really stand out when they're black and white against that background as well. And there you go. There's that cute girl with her flower. I just love this set. And that bit of vellum really makes her pop against the colorful background. And then I'm going to bring back that first card that I just finished up. Love the warm colors with those flowers. And I just like the simplicity. I always like really clean and simple cards. And here's the third one I did. So I used the same embossing powder as the blue card, but I did use some green tones. I used Twisted Citron, Cracked Pistachio, and Lucky Clover. And then I used an image, that cat image, which I showed you earlier is from that Enveloper Choice. I just stamped it down on some white cardstock and then fussy cut it out. And then stamped the sentiment on a strip of black cardstock, white embossed it, and then stamped the second part of the sentiment, which says, if friends were flowers, I'd pick you, and I put the I pick you part on the inside of the card. So I really like how that came out and turned out. So if you guys have any questions about the product I use, please visit waffleflower.com, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas.